the permafree method still works. Now, it might not work like it used to when the shelves in Amazon weren't so crowded, but anecdotally, I can say posting a book for free without any marketing has already, again, gotten me multiple reviews, many sales.
Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Ihsan,
And I'm Erick Mertz.
and this is episode 149 of the podcast. It is March 20th, 2024, as we record this. And today we're talking about observations on the changes in Amazon. Maybe you've heard or read about some of those. We don't have any new patrons this week, but thank you so much to the existing ones. Thank you for believing in our work offline here on the podcast. You can go check out both of our pages. We have patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan and patreon.com/Strange Air Stories. Announcements. Again, registration is currently open for the 2024 Writer Craft Writing Retreat and Workshop. There are 4 workshops in the retreat. There's an open mic. There's a scene analysis circle. It's really cool. Definitely worth your while to go check it out. ValerieIhsan.com/retreat for more info. And the link will be in the show notes. What's been going on?
I mean, quite a quite a bit. I mean, quite a bit. It's been busy here. I'm working with a marketer, digital marketer, something I've never done before. I've always sort of hired out service for my sites and things, and never hired someone to do an analysis.
Mm.
And so I have been, yeah, working with a local guy. And it's kind of unfortunate because I've gotten back this analysis of my web presence, and it is chock full of things to do. Um, it is chock full of things to do, and there's no that he didn't give an order. And I'm like, that's the brilliance of you as a businessman, because I have to come back to you and get your, what order do you think we should do these 6 things? Um, so no, it's been good. On that note, when you hire someone to work on a part of your business, usually, you're going to them and saying, "Hey, I've identified this need. Can you service that need?" And they, because they're a business, they say, "Yep, we can service that need." This is the opportunity to have somebody from the outside looking in and say, "You don't know what's wrong. You don't know what you need me for. I'm going to tell you." And so, yeah, it has led me just on the business side of my business side to, I keep a marketing notebook, just like ideas and things to do, and the list of blogs to write and all this other stuff that, like, it's been my process for a couple of years. But after reading that analysis, I tore out a few pages out of that book and said, I'm starting this whole thing over, because what I thought I was missing, maybe I am missing but don't need, and then there's things that I didn't know I was missing that I now need to focus on. And it's great. I would recommend anybody, if you run any kind of small business, to find someone to, don't hire them for the service, hire them to diagnose what you need before you
Mm.
go out and hire for the service, because it looks like I've been paying for things I don't need, or paying for things that are not effective. And
Mm-hmm.
that's been, I'm not mad about it, but I'm realizing, like, I should have done this a couple of years ago, because,
I was just
yeah,
going to
there's a
ask you, like, when do you recommend a person do that for their author business?
I think if you're doing kind of author services, or you're doing, um I think once you sort of, I think it would be, I'm stuttering. I think it would be meaningful to do after you've sort of had a little time in the market, and your head identified problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've identified problems. I've seen, like, I get nothing over here, I get something over here, I get nothing over here. And I'm trying to make sense of it. I think if you hadn't, brought in an analyst without anything to really analyze, you'd be spinning your wheels. But I've got, 20 years of sites, and, or, many years of service. And And he identified, like, you've never done anything with this. Your customers may be there. Have you ever thought of doing this? And I'm over here shaking my head like, no, I've never thought of anything like that. So, and also, he offers an array of service. And again, if I'd identified like, hey, I want you to do this for me, then he would then say yes or no, let's do this. But now I've kind of come to him and said, like, I don't, in your menu of services, I don't know what I need. Why don't we look at my business and decide what I need out of what you offer? And that sort of changes the dynamic. So I think, yeah, once you've gotten in far enough to have made some inroads, identified strengths and weaknesses, get them on board to help you identify opportunities.
Cool. That's a good tip.
Yeah. And I'm also publishing an anthology. If anybody wants to go to caretakerpress.org, my friend James and I are running um, a horror anthology. We're looking for stories of any length that are inspired by the Pacific Northwest. You don't have to be a resident of the Pacific Northwest. We just want stories that are inspired by this place. And we are now about 10 days into submissions. I haven't really broadcast submissions much beyond a couple of Facebook posts and a couple of Instagram posts. And we've got, I think, 20 some odd stories in the hopper to look at. Um, Interesting, very interesting. About a third of them came in. There's been 2 Sundays since announcing this.
Hmm.
A third of those stories came in on those 2 Sundays. So clearly, people use Sunday afternoons to search for markets and things like that. So, but anyway, caretakerpress.org. We are there. Yeah, give us your best story.
Awesome.
What about you? What's going on?
Well, I have, I don't know if this was one of those books that sort of like slipped through the radar. I talked about it and talked about it and talked about it and then never said when it was published. So I have a book
Okay.
out. It was the one I was talking about last year, and it came out in January, and then all of the Turkey stuff happened, so it kind of slipped my radar. But I do have a book out. It's a nonfiction for authors. It is, if you look it up on Amazon, it's Three Story Method Writing How-To Books. So it's in the Three
Cool.
Story Method series, but it's a book on writing how-to books. So if you've got a topic in you, um, your niche or a idea about how to, it could be anything. It could be like how to um, get back into the yoga scene, or how to pick out your ghostwriter, or it could be any how-to that you
Right.
want to write. And so this is a book on how to write how-to books. So it's very meta, but I think it is a niche in the market that people need. So yeah, I co-wrote it with Thorn and Miranda Weingartner, and so you
Cool.
can find it on Amazon, and I'll put a link
Cool.
in the show notes.
Is that the only place you're distributing it?
Um, ebook wise, it's everywhere, but print, it's only through Amazon, I believe.
Okay.
I wasn't in, since it's a co-written, like Jay was the one that pushed the publish button. So I have no
Okay.
control over that. He's the one that controls the Three Story Method series. And there's
Okay.
quite a bit of books in the series. Actually, he did a whole slew of Chat GPT um, writing books, or even just one of my favorites actually was one on like character archetypes and how to use Chat GPT with that. It was a pretty interesting book. I read it. It was rad. So yeah, any of the books in the Three Story Method series are good. I vouch for them.
Okay.
That's my update. What
What
are
are
you
you
reading?
reading?
Ah,
Oh,
ha,
I got there
ha.
first. I was there first.
All right. I'm still reading The Ward Witch. It's been really cool. I actually am really resonating with the main character. I'm sorry, I finished The Ward Witch. I started The Bookkeeper, which is book 2 in that series, and it's still like the main characters, the same main character going through, but I'm really digging it. I really like this
Cool.
series. It's making me want. So Sarah Painter is the author, and she has um a really she's got I started reading her when she wrote magical realism and women's fiction back in the day, and I loved every single one of them and reread them and all that. And then she started an urban fantasy series um that was really cool. And I read like the first three books, I think. I'm on her ARC team. And then I don't know what happened, but I kind of like slipped out of the rotation and all these other books that I was reading. And so I didn't finish the other series. And and so this new series, I jumped on the chance to start a new series, and it's taking place in the same in the same world as so just like yours, I think, right?
Right.
So
Right.
your new
Yep.
series is in the same world as the Melville series, but
To be determined. Like,
to
I
be
don't know.
determined. Okay.
I think, again, as a fan of Stephen King, I think I can, now that I have established this new location, I would be remiss if I didn't use this new location in the Melville series and vice versa. I
Yeah.
think it would be easy to have
The Easter
somebody talk up.
eggs.
Yeah, there's those little things. Yeah.
And I think that adds so much for fans too, because it's
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
it is like a surprise and a little delight when they run across something that's like, oh, this is from the and then it
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
makes a lot of connections too. And I think that deepens the relationship that the reader has with the characters too, because then
Yeah.
I don't know, it puts them in a it's like the trajectory or like they can find their place in the world when they have
Well,
another reference point.
I think it gives things just an I don't know. I think it gives. I think when you do those kind of things, I mean, Stephen King does this like
Hmm.
in everything, right? He's got his sort of metaverse, and the story that I just in the collection I just finished that takes place in this town happens to be a town that somebody in this book moved to. Like it that gives everything this realm of realism. I don't. For me, it just makes everything feel so real and so vivid. Like it makes me want to read it. To It makes me want to read it. Now you can
Hmm.
be. I felt like in Billy Summers, Stephen King's book from like 3 years ago, he kind of he brought in elements of The Shining, which felt clumsy. I mean, I was like,
Mm.
really, we're gonna do this? Is what we're doing here? But even then, I thought like if this is what keeps it going in his mind and keeps it all interconnected, then even when it's clumsy, it works.
Hmm.
So
So that is what I'm reading. I'm reading The Bookkeeper by Sarah
cool,
Painter.
cool. Um, I just finished Full Dark, No Stars, the four novellas in that book.
Hmm.
I think four stories, four wildly different levels of interest and quality. Um, there were two of them that were terrific. And I think there was one of them that was, it felt like the first draft that because he's Stephen King, he gets to publish it. And there was one that was just downright awful. There was one that was so bad, I would say that I couldn't finish it, even though I had like 40 pages left. I couldn't. So I sat down to watch the movie. And then halfway through the movie, I said to myself, "Oh wait, you fell asleep in this movie like last year." Uh, so all told, it like no, like 1922 is the last Stephen King story I would ever reread. I thought it was just a really poorly executed story, but that volume's got a couple of good ones. And so then I picked up I'm on like a Stephen King thing. So now I picked up the Bachman books, which is one of the earlier um it's like a collection of his earlier stories. Um, so I've never read it, and so I'm going to be reading that here soon.
the Bachman books.
So yeah, he early in his career, Stephen King published because his publisher said he was writing too fast.
Hmm.
They created a pseudonym for him, Richard Bachman, and
Oh, okay.
there were four novels that he published as Richard Bachman. I think there may be more, but it's like The Running Man, which was that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and there's
Mm-hmm.
Road Work, which is the one I've really wanted to read. And then I think The Long Walk is in there too. I forget what the fourth story is. But yeah, so this was like his publisher saying, "You're writing too fast. We don't want people to get tired of you. So you're now Richard Bachman for these stories." So they're often referred to as fans by the Bachman books.
And apparently, I just looked it up on Amazon. You can buy the collection as the Bachman books. You can buy the
Yeah.
whole like omnibus of
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of
that's what
them.
I have. There's like
Okay.
an the first edition of it's like black with all this gold writing on it, and I don't know why I've always loved that book. It's like back in the old days, and we're going to talk about Amazon, but like back in the old days, you could publish a book with like text as a cover, right? Like you text art as the cover. It's just that was enough mood. It's black with gold writing. Ooh, now every book looks the same. You go into Amazon and you click on your favorite category, and you're like, oh, look, a bunch of beautiful men and women with monster parts. Great. I must be an urban fantasy. I don't know.
What about Ring
I
Shout? Did
like
you
the
finish that?
which one?
Ring Shout?
Oh gosh, that was an audiobook. I think I'm still like a chapter into the audiobook.
Okay.
Shh, don't tell anybody. I have a hard time gravitating towards audiobooks. I mean, I think that I end
I
up
actually
like
am in the middle of an audiobook too that I have forgotten about. Yeah, same.
I just drop it easily because I get into podcasts, and then there's like my podcasts go in these cycles where I feel like podcasts that I listen to come out like Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. And so then it's like I might have missed 4 days of audiobook because my listening comes for podcasts. So
And I like listening to audiobooks when I'm traveling. And I haven't, I mean, so I was listening to this audiobook on the way home on the plane from Turkey.
right.
And so I didn't get, yeah, I didn't finish it. So I haven't looked into it since then. All right. Well, let's get into the topic. So we titled this Observations on the Changes in Amazon. So we've
Yeah.
been noticing that things have been changing around a little bit in Amazon, and I've seen lots of blogs, about the changes, but I liked your idea of kind of checking in verbally about it and seeing, what you've been observing around it, and you told me that you just did something on Amazon as a marketing thing. So I wanted to hear about
Yeah.
a little bit more about that too. So why don't you, where do you want to
Well,
start?
so let's just preface all this by saying that Amazon is always KDP is always changing. I mean,
Mhm.
if you, I sometimes listen to the self-publishing with Dale podcast, and I think he's at least 20 to 30% of his podcasts are about what's happening on KDP. And if you're on a really, intense level with it, with the interface, like it must be changed. It must be something you just have to keep up on all the time. It's like the stock market. It's never the same. But,
Also, there's that whole mindset around being an author in this century, in this decade, in this year, whatever. It's always changing, and you can't I mean, you can't be upset about the changes that are being made and rant and rave about it because it took away half your income or whatever. It's just the way it works. Like you have to be okay. If you're publishing with this company, then you need to be okay with whatever they do.
right. And for better or worse, I think a lot of the changes that Amazon is making is in the interest, well, it's in the interest of Amazon making more money. But
Hmm.
if you look at it from your part of that, like they're trying to make it easier to sell your books so they can make money. Like they're not making money on books. They're making 20%, 30, 70%, depending on your royalty share. Like they're not making that money unless you sell your book.
Hmm.
And whenever I hear the cynics kind of blowing up about something, I always think like anything they're doing is the interest of making money, yes, but you are the vehicle for them making money. So those things have to work together. Now,
Hmm.
I think there's probably some pretty well versed and steeped indie authors that would hear me say that and want to throw a phone at me because that like creates frustration. But like, I don't know. I try to look at any of those changes that I see as like this is somehow, I should be able to figure out how to work with this in order um not to game it, but to like, there's a way this can work for me, and I just have to figure it out. Um, so yeah, just some like observations and just what I've noticed. So in marketing my main series, um, yeah, I made the decision about a month and a half ago that I had a book that was on, I was distributing through BookFunnel. It was my lead magnet. It was my primary source of getting new readers onto my mailing list. And I've noticed if you use BookFunnel for an extended period of time, there is sort of a plateau where the kind of you're kind of done getting new free seekers. If you have a book, it's about, I think there's about 6,000 downloads of that book through BookFunnel. It's now plateaued. The return on investment for free seekers is just small anymore. So I decided that I would, instead of using the BookFunnel, mechanism to get new readers into my mailing list, I thought it might be best to maybe make this a new perma-free book on Amazon. Now, if you're not familiar, Amazon allows you cannot make your book free on Amazon without a little bit of gamesmanship. So you can make your book 99 cents. And so what I did was I took that book, I got a new cover. So it's now a more traditional mystery book cover. And I posted it on Amazon for 99 cents. But then at the same time, I also posted it on Barnes and Noble for free. Barnes and Noble lets you post your book for free. And I then went to Amazon and said, "Hey, Amazon, this book is free over at Barnes and Noble," and that allowed me to get a price match. So now that book is permanently free on Amazon. This is a very like this is the way it works. This is the way the end around Amazon wanting to charge you for everything. And in the last like 2 weeks that it's been free, I have seen it has been and I've run no marketing to it. I've announced it to no one. I've said nothing about this book being free yet. I've just wanted to see what naturally making a book free does. And I have had 100 some odd downloads of it just from people finding it on their own. That has led to sell through to the next 3 books in the series. I've sold more books now, 2, 3, and 4 than I sold in that month up to that point. The sell through was great, and it's led to multiple reviews of each book. So the idea that like when people talk about ways to market a book and this idea of the perma-free book, you'll see it and people talk about it all the time. What hasn't changed on Amazon, I think, and this is good, and what I want to let everybody know is that the perma-free method still works. Now, it might not work like it used to when the shelves in Amazon weren't so crowded, but anecdotally, I can say posting a book for free without any marketing has already, again, gotten me multiple reviews, many sales, which is promising for what is the next step in that perma-free book marketing, and that is like running ads to your perma-free book, using that as and then really amping up that sell through. So perma-free works.
That's
It really does.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
My plan, I do have another, I've had this book written forever, and I've brought it up on the podcast before. It's another nonfiction book for writers, and I think I wrote it like 4 years ago or something, and I never did anything with it because it is a short book. And I thought that it was too short to do anything with. So I was kind of waiting until I had something else that I could naturally, combine it with so that it wasn't just an obvious add-on, I wanted it to
Right.
be. And and so I have been toying with this idea of either doing a perma-free, having it just be, first in series, because it is a series,
Right.
or putting it as a lead magnet on my website. So now I'm wondering if I should
All
just
of those
jump,
things.
but I
All
don't,
of those things work.
but you can't do them at the same time.
You
Is
can.
that, you can have
Well, if you make your book perma-free, so like where
Uh-huh.
Amazon wants exclusivity is if you're in KDP. So if you
That's
enroll your book
true.
in KDP, you are exclusive. Your ebook distribution is exclusive to Amazon.
Right.
People put their books in KDP because they want people to be able to download that book consequence free, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
paying in KDP, you're paying a $10 a month subscription, you're downloading all you want.
Mm-hmm.
And so I use that for consequence free reading. I try out, this is where I do all my market research on books, or most of it. So the way around that is to not enroll that in KDP, but make it free. And I think to the end user who's looking at your Amazon page, it all looks it looks the same. I mean, it doesn't look the same. There's different buttons and different banners, but it's still like I'm looking at a free book. I'm looking at a book
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to cost me anything right now to download it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to remove that barrier to that initial reader.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so free works. I mean, it really does. And my mother-in-law used to always say, like, if you value something, why give it away for free? And I get that, but she's from a different generation where I think like the shelf was the sort of there was this assumption that if a product was on the shelf, it has gone through all the gatekeepers necessary to give it to say that it's quality, right? If you have a business card, if you're in the phone book, that vouches for to an extent for the validity of your business. I don't think we're in that world anymore. I think there's so much content, especially if you're with anything to do with content. There's so much of it. There's just so much of it. You can't expect people to pay you for the first taste of something. It's why when you go to the grocery store now and you're flooded with choices, there's somebody standing there with a cup of coffee and a honey roasted almond because that's how you get customers.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I've balked at it. I've definitely balked at the idea of it. I kind of bought into the I've definitely bought into the idea of being of using that mailing list exclusively, but this is a way to do both. And the other power here that I need to mention is like I had to be really honest about the cover of that book. And I recognize I went on Amazon and I looked at like 1,000 mystery paranormal books. And the book that I was giving away, like the cover was bleeped. It was bleepity bleep. It was terrible. Like I
Oh,
don't want to say any yeah, let's
it
bleep
was
out
effed.
my it was really bad. And so I think that's another, I think now that I'm looking at Amazon, I'm looking at my book on the shelf on Amazon, the cover fits um with the genre. And again, there's another, I just said moments ago how I loved the good old days where you could have a cover that was, that looked unique or
Text,
that,
yeah.
yeah, but it's not like that now. Until you get that real readership that you can sustain, you have to look the same and different at the same time. So, um, Amazon hasn't changed in that way. Another something that has changed that I think is worth talking about is when I posted this book, I think the last book that I posted before that one was in like the last time I did any updating on Amazon was January. This time when I went back and posted and really got into my bookshelf, I noticed that all of my books, the longer books in my series, are eligible for a virtual voice audiobook. Um, and so there's a big banner now. If you have a KDP account, or if you don't have a KDP account, you should know that. And one of the things you do with Amazon is you make yourself like available for beta testing. And so that allows you to get in early on things that they
How do you
do.
make
Like when
yourself available for?
I think it's just something in your profile. Like I think you can just click like interested in like that you're interested in learning about what Amazon's doing in publishing or something
In your
like that. And
KDP profile?
yeah, in your KDP profile, I think you can like opt out of betas, but I've always opted in because this is what these you know really in-depth Amazon podcasts talk about but this is happening, right? So previously I would imagine that your path to an audiobook is completed text. You either build your studio at home and record the book and then have someone engineer it and upload it into Audible, and that's your audiobook. Amazon approves or disapproves of your audiobook, and then you have an audiobook. But now it appears as though virtual voice is going to perhaps cut out the need for actors, and I say that intentionally because voice actors are working creatives as well. Um, yeah, it looks like virtual voice is going to be a quicker path to the market for your audiobook.
So is this like
I haven't
AI?
clicked the button yet.
You haven't
I have
clicked the
not
button
I have not
yet.
clicked the button yet, but if I look at any of my books that are over, I think any of the, I'm looking at it right now. Like I think any book that I have that's over like 150 pages. I have some short reads on here. And The Forgotten Shadows, which is what I published a couple of weeks ago as a permafree, I think that one was like 152 pages after I pumped it up with some short stories. Yeah, it's your book is eligible for an audiobook, and it says add audiobook with virtual voice, and it explains to you that virtual voice is computer generated narration for audiobooks.
So
And
it's not computer generated your voice, it's just computer generated like Siri or Google Voice or
yeah,
whatever.
it's computer, it's
Okay.
yeah, computer generated not your voice, computer generated. And there's been talk about this. I mean, I know Joanna Penn's talked about it. I know that people talked about it before. Like I don't think anybody is so foolish at this point to say like, expect AI to pop up in this and expect it to pop up in that. Like that shouldn't surprise us. It should only like, yeah, it should just be expected. But it was a little alarming to me that like the that all I have to do here is click a button.
And then you'll have
And
an
again,
audiobook.
I could click on, I'm looking at 10 titles and I could click on 7 of them and have an audiobook. And that, I just think it's important to note like that the ease of use is great because if you want to capitalize audiobooks, or you have to, I mean, you kind of have to be in audiobooks because it's a growing part of the market. And I'm certainly considering how to get there. But what control over quality am I going to get if especially if I'm a fantasy or a sci-fi author where I've got these names that are, like fantasy is full of names that aren't found in, that are made up words, made up
Hmm.
place names, made up people names. Like, what do you do? Like, what do you do with your creation? Like, if you're not controlling the production of it. I think that's a weirdly slippery slope for me when I think about it.
I've been hearing some authors making it obvious. Like AI to them was no big deal. It's just another, like you said, it's another product that you'd be putting out there. If you click that button, you've got an audiobook now. And that's just another stream of income. And it's I mean, I have friends that won't buy my book and until it's in audio form, because that's the only way they consume books. So that's a whole other market of people that, will buy your audiobook. And like you, I'm reticent to let the quality go away. So on the cover, it can, maybe you can put, that it's virtual voice, narrated by virtual voice. And then you can come out with another product, different cover, and it says narrated by the author or something like that. So I've
Yeah.
heard of authors doing both so that, this one's an artisan product. It costs a little bit more, maybe, because you've got to factor in all of the narration costs. And I mean, that's why audiobooks are so expensive, because it does take a lot of the actors' time and expertise, and then the editing of the files. And, it's a production
Yeah.
to create an audiobook. So,
I mean,
and
I priced an audiobook with JS Arkin, who's a local guy. And basically to do a 500-page book or 400 to 500-page book would cost with if he's going to do the engineering and the narration, it's going to be, I think it would be about $2,200. You have to sell a lot of audiobooks to make that back, and then sell a lot more to get into the black. And so I get that that barrier to entry is, yeah, $2,200 would be in the self-publishing food chain the most expensive, right? It's more expensive than writing the book. It's a little more expensive than probably editing and proofreading the book.
Yeah.
It's a little more so it is, and I agree with you. I think like I'm gonna watch this because I really want to know what is Amazon going to say, what's Audible going to say about, there is that little intro at the beginning of an audiobook that like nobody listens to. I mean, my wife listens to audiobooks. I don't think she probably is like, ooh, who's the narrator here? She might know, or people might know if like, oh, this is Matthew McConaughey's book and Matthew McConaughey is narrating it. Like that might be a known element. But this idea that like, we know the actors, but also we know that those are actors. We know that those are performances. And so
Hmm.
I guess I'm just leery of like pressing a button and having AI do something, and it's like it's going to get it 95% right. Um,
Well, maybe doing it on the Permafree book would be the one to try it on.
right. I guess I'm going to follow this because I have three questions about it. One, what are they doing about like weird words, right?
Hmm.
Because I don't write that stuff currently, but there could be I want to know if an author
Hmm.
ever asked me, hey, I write sci-fi. What is it going to do with my weird words? Number two, is it going to become something I can't, um, well, number two is, am I going to get to listen to it and proof it and say, ooh, wrong stress here, wrong stress here.
Hmm.
That's an emotional moment that AI didn't pick up. That's not as emotional as AI thinks it is. And three, this is the big one. Am I now locked into that as my audiobook? Because I think the way I'd want to do it is, and I say this with all, not thinking about the time production, but like if you could put that thing out there and make enough off of the AI audiobook to fund a real audiobook, um, that sounds like a great deal. Yeah, I just made 2 grand
Let me
on
just go back. Real audiobook. You have a real audiobook, but you're looking for something that's narrated by a human voice then, as opposed to one narrated by a virtual voice.
right, right. Yeah, that's what I say by real. And but then I say that out loud, like, oh, hey, I'm going to put this audiobook out and I'll do the AI audiobook. It'll make me some money. And then I'll take that money and invest it in doing a real performed audiobook. But then I realized, like, what business person does that? If you put out the AI audiobook and it's working, you would be really silly to take it off the market only to spend that money on replacing the product that worked. I mean, nobody would do that. So now that I've said that out loud, like, if the AI audiobook is selling, and I think we're all going to leave it at that. It's like, okay, this is what it is, and if people like it, then people like it. I don't know. It's a weird slope, and there is also a bit of like that community feel that I get. That's like, I also don't want that out there. Like, I don't want to tell my community like, hey, I've got this audiobook, and then have those people. I don't know. It still feels like a shortcut. Still feels like a shortcut to me.
I don't mind the shortcut aspect of it. I would be worried about the quality. If the
I'm
quality
so
is
worried about
not up to snuff, then you can unpublish it, I suppose.
I hope. I hope. I
Yeah.
hope they don't lock you in. I love the idea that like Amazon will take it's creating the product to remove the speed bump of issues, because there are people who they do the audiobook, it doesn't, they come back with Amazon finds problems, they ask you to fix them, so then you've got to go back to the engineer or the actor, you got to do all this stuff. Like I love that idea. Like I would do anything to get rid of those sort of like 11th hour steps and
Hmm.
roadblocks, but at what cost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, since we're talking about audiobooks, this is non-Amazon related, but it is audiobook related. I've heard in the space about people putting up their audio on, say, YouTube or something for free. They just narrate it themselves. So maybe the quality isn't like studio quality. So what are your thoughts on that, I guess?
Love it. I think we know that YouTube is a people listen to music on YouTube. People use it. I mean, I know people who use it like a playlist like they would on Spotify or something else. So
We're just talking about the quality aspect of it, I guess, because I've thought of doing that myself. Got the nice little mic, I've got like a one of those foamy things that it's right there. I don't know if you can see it. You open it up
I
and it goes around for sound
right.
quality or whatever. And I have narrated an audiobook for somebody else before, so it's been on my mind, especially since I write memoir. I mean, it's kind of weird to have another person narrate
Right.
your memoir, but people do it. So, but I've had interest in doing that. But the barrier has always been, what if it's bad, or it doesn't have that great quality, my editing isn't really up to snuff, and then the cost too. So my
I think it
thought
just
had been to just do it for practice and to see how bad could it
well,
really be, and put it on
you know,
Spotify and YouTube for free.
I'd say just because you're in control of it, like you can just take it down. So if
Yeah.
you don't love it, if it does what it does, if it does what it needs to do, and then you outgrow it, I think that's something, and that's a whole nother topic, and we're at the hour, so like I don't want to dive
Mm-hmm.
into this one, but like you do outgrow things, and just like the cover to the Permafree book, like it got me through. It didn't work. I had outgrown it. I realized it didn't work. I outgrew it, and then it was time to do something else. So
And
I think
that
it's okay
feeds
to
us,
outgrow things.
yeah, and that kind of feeds back to last week's or 2 weeks ago, I guess. Well, on the pivots, when you
Yeah,
go into something and you realize it's not quite right for you anymore in this season, then you can pivot to something else that does work, whether it's a new
absolutely.
cover or a new job or whatever.
Right, right.
Awesome. We can pivot.
Let's pivot.
We have a that can be another t-shirt. We can pivot.
We can move.
It's okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for talking with me about this. It's been
My pleasure.
inspiring. I
Absolutely.
have several new things on my to-do list that I will joyfully jump into.
And
And
reflect on in a couple of weeks.
yeah, yes. Oh, we should say, yeah, actually, we should have mentioned this at the top of the episode. Our um, we mentioned last week that we were going to be interviewing an author today on this episode, and she had a family emergency, so that is postponed. So next week, Erick is going to be on vacation. Where
Mm,
are you going?
just driving around the
Just
state of
driving.
Oregon. Yep.
Nice, nice.
Yep.
Are you renting like an RV, or are you just doing it in your car, or?
In our car, we are actively shopping for an RV, but we didn't get
Nice.
one in time for this, so we're just going to get some road.
All right, awesome. So next week, I'll be putting up a solo show.
Cool.
All right. Well, I'll
And then
see
the
you in
week
2
after,
weeks then.
well, yeah, with new updates.
Ooh, yes. For both of us, I hope.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for talking to
Take
me, Erick. Bye-bye.
take care.